Hi everybody, Travis Marshall here, and I just want to share a few thoughts that have been on my heart and in my head, rattling around. Pray that it might be encouraging. Very much still in process, and I would imagine this morning or this evening, whenever you're listening to this, you too would consider your life very much in process, whatever you're dealing with. I was reminded this morning of an image as I was driving, an image of the middle of the night when one of my daughters would cry out and try to get our attention. We'd pop up, Kim or I, and go into their room, and we didn't start immediately when we walked into the room trying to fix the situation. Normally I would walk into the room and I would sit down on the edge of their bed and I would start with this question: what's happening? Is there something wrong? What are you worried about? What are you feeling? After answering that or asking that question, I would let them answer it. A lot of times I would put my hand on their hand or on their head or on their cheek. I'd lean down and I would hug them. I would be close to them. I would be present. And I started thinking about that image as I was reflecting on Psalm 77, a psalm that very well could and should have probably been cut out of the Bible because it's messy. But it identifies with our human emotion of anger, of disgust, of unbelief. And this is what the psalmist says in a paraphrased version. I yell out to my God. I yell out with all my might. I yell at the top of my lungs. He listens. I found myself in trouble and went looking for the Lord. My life was an open wound that just wouldn't heal. When friends said everything will turn out all right, I didn't believe a word they said. I remember God, but then shake my head. I bow my head, then wring my hands. Those first three verses of that psalm is painstakingly honest. And there's two things that pops out. During the yelling spurts, the psalmist recalls he listens. Even after saying things like, my life is an open wound that won't heal, and even after the very unhelpful comment of the friends, the psalmist says, I remember God. I have to imagine that the psalmist is familiar with the presence of God. And even in the midst of all of the different emotions, all of the different challenges, all of the different outlooks upon life, situations, turmoils, they're remembering that the Lord is near. Maybe that's why they're so comfortable in expressing that anger, because they actually know that the Lord is near. My daughters, as they laid in bed, they would say the very thing that was at the very top of their mind. They wouldn't think through it and parse it and organize their thoughts. They would just blurt it out. And I received that, and I listened intently, compassionately, empathetically. I'm their dad. I want to comfort them, whether it's a bad dream or they're just thirsty and need a drink of water. I was more than willing to be able to then provide for them. But here's the thing. Provision doesn't come before presence. I never see that in the Bible. I never see that even through the Psalms, which I spend a lot of time in my mornings in. I see a God that is relentlessly present first. And through the ministry of of God's presence through the Son, through the Spirit, through the Father, then the provision comes. Most of the time, it's not the provision that I necessarily think that I want before I acknowledge God's presence. But something transforms. God's presence changes us. So I want to leave you with that thought today. God's presence changes you, changes me. I think about when the Apostle Paul, he had the bold words when he was writing to the church in Corinth. I mentioned this on Sunday in my message, but he said, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." God speaking to Paul. Therefore, he says, "I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses." I have to imagine that Paul is familiar with the presence of God, and so that allows him to feel safe in his presence to then expose, offer, give up who he really is. And that is his weakness. The irony there, though, is that his weakness is his strength, because our weakness brings about the perfect presence of God's strength in our life each and every time. So this day, when you feel weak, when you feel angry, when you're having a hard time sleeping, when you don't want to get up out of bed of a morning, when you find yourself in the monotony of yet another day, be reminded that God is near. And maybe just start by asking the Lord to reveal his presence to you so that you would feel safe enough to express the very things that cover your heart. And in that, the Lord is so quick to answer, so quick to provide. But let me tell you, it won't be what you initially thought it would be or should be. But it will be even better. It will be God's presence through his providing. So with that thought, I'm going to join you in that today as I continue on. Lord be with you, bless you, and keep you. Bye, church.